Hello, and welcome to USA Today's The Excerpt. I'm Dana Taylor. What happens when we stop trusting experts? This isn't just a philosophical question. Partisan battles have crept into nearly every facet of American society, from science to entertainment. Political scientist Roger Pielke Jr. argues it's not just bad for science, it's dangerous for democracy itself. Roger is a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and the author of the Substack, The Honest Broker. Thanks for joining me, Roger.
Dana, great to be with you.
You write that democracy is a collaboration between experts and non-experts, citing the early 20th century political scientist Elmer Eric Schatzsnyder. How has this dynamic between those who are experts and those who aren't evolved in the digital age?
Yeah, we have this crazy idea in our society that anyone can participate in the political process. All of us who are eligible can vote. Any of us can run for office that are eligible and be elected, and you don't have to be an expert in anything. At the same time, to make society go, to make society function, we need air traffic control, we need nuclear power plants, we have to deliver clean water, we have to protect the environment. We have to have a military, and that requires considerable expertise. And so it is a real fundamental aspect of modern democracy that as society becomes more technologically oriented, the tensions between democratic governance, everyone, and the necessary role of expertise, a very specialized group, is going to be in some kind of a tension. And that's just become more pronounced in the 21st century.
You emphasize that expertise is not synonymous with credentials, such as a college degree, a PhD, or an MD. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, experts can be found all throughout society in all sorts of roles. Sometimes we fall into the trap of thinking that you have to go to an elite university or you have to be wearing a lab coat to be an expert in something. But there's plenty of people who in their day-to-day jobs have expertise, whether they're farmers or electricians or mechanics or mothers or fathers. Functioning in society requires a lot of specialized expertise that doesn't necessarily come with a piece of paper from a university.
How can institutions better recognize and integrate non-traditional forms of expertise into decision making?
Yeah, I think that the first step is for people to respect that institutions are necessary. It's not just having expertise, but it's organizing expertise in order to get stuff done. When people lose their trust in institutions, that becomes a real problem because then it becomes much more difficult to get things done. To get institutions of expertise that people recognize as authoritative and importantly as legitimate requires that they see themselves in those institutions. So having a broad diversity of peoples and talents and perspectives in those institutions is really necessary for democracy to work.
You've written that credentialed experts have become overt partisans. What do you believe drives this shift, and can it be reversed?
Yeah, we've seen a long-term uh, pattern in the United States. It's not only in the United States, but where people who are in universities, and I spent 24 years as a college professor, have seen their roles evolved, and some of that's been self-inflicted. And I've seen it myself. Our job in universities is to do research, to teach, and to serve our academic community. In some instances, university professors and sometimes students uh, and administrators have seen their roles to be activists, to push for their favorite causes. When those causes aren't reflective of the population as a whole, it's very easy for things to become polarized. And then we see a backlash. And certainly, particularly folks on the right have exploited that. There's no one's innocent here, but we have seen trust among the American population in science diminish, certainly in medicine, and a big drop in trust in universities. The drop in trust among Americans for universities, it is partisan, but it goes much broader than just simply being partisan. The only group for which trust in universities has not dropped are college-educated, wealthy liberals.
I want to stick with the declining trust in science that you've touched on among various demographic groups. What strategies would you recommend that could be used to rebuild trust across these ideological differences?
I mean, there's a lot of things that could be done. I mean, the first thing that needs to be done is that elected officials, and particularly it's the MAGA Republicans, need to back off trying to undercut or even destroy aspects of science and universities. I get it. There's some angry people out there who feel like universities have done wrong by their group or by society at large. but that's not particularly helpful. On the other side, universities need to step up and be the adults in the room to take charge and ensure that their campuses are number one, fulfilling their mission of research, teaching, and service, and to pull back on the overt political activism among faculty. As a professor, I had what's called academic freedom. I could opine on any topic that I want. That's very different than an institution, the university as a whole, or a department, or a center, taking a political position, and in many cases using public resources to advance a special interest cause. So there's a lot that can be done, and it's going to take a while to unwind this conflict that has developed over many decades.
You highlight the role of media in politicizing expertise. What practical steps can experts take to insulate their work from partisan manipulation?
Yeah, I mean, there's been trends, and I'm sure you're far more aware of this than I am, in the media over the last several decades, partly due to the internet and social media, but where people can select their media according to their political preferences. So you can go an entire day and not encounter a view that you disagree with. And media to have responded to incentives by focusing content on that which their selected audience wants to hear. And so we do have Fox News on the one hand and MSNBC on the other hand, and it's very difficult to find straight shooters out there in the media. And for experts, on the one hand, this can be appealing. So the Republican experts will go to Fox News and give their quotes there, and folks progressive will go to MSNBC. And very soon we have alternate versions of the world developing that are in conflict, and the experts don't have to confront each other, and the different media don't have to confront each other. And again, that gets us back to the fundamental points of democracy, which is we all have to agree to get along, even if we don't always agree on everything.
I want to circle back to academia. It's become ideologically unbalanced. You've written about that. How so? And what reforms would you propose to restore political diversity in academic institutions?
Yeah, the lack of representativeness among university faculty compared to the population at large isn't necessarily itself problematic. I mean, consider that the U.S. military probably has a lean to the right. If you took a political poll of all of the soldiers and officers in the military, but they still could do their job very well. The issue is less the political diversity among faculty than it is what the institutions do, given that lack of political diversity. Of course, it would be great if there was more diversity in academia, and not just political diversity, all sorts of diversity, intellectual diversity. University professors should look more like America looks, in my view. To do that, universities have to recognize that they serve the public. Obviously, public universities do, but private universities get generous tax breaks. And so part of that would mean reflecting the needs of our society. And sure, there's a great training in classics or political science like I did, but the future is going to require a lot more folks with specialized STEM training, training in AI, training in more conventional sorts of practices like electricians and plumbers and people that make the world go. Universities can certainly participate in that sort of training also. And so by offering products and services that are more reflective of the economy in the United States as a whole, I think universities will naturally gravitate towards being more diverse places that people look to, once again, as serving the interests of the country.
You suggest that experts need to make peace with democracy. What does that look like in practice, especially for scientists working in highly polarized environments?
I think most people probably heard the phrase during the pandemic that we must, quote unquote, follow the science. And it's important for experts to realize that democracy isn't run by experts. It's great to be an expert and you have some specialized knowledge, but democracy is messy and people argue and they have different values, and they agree to compromise, which means maybe nobody's happy at the end. Certainly, over the last few decades, the expert community on topics like climate change or public health have decided that they know best and that the citizens should follow what we experts say. And so there's an awful lot of statements and letters put out and demands by experts that this is the only correct way to go forward. I think we experts have to recognize that that's not how things work. We can certainly participate in the democratic process, but when it comes down to it, a person with a PhD has the same number of votes in an election as a person who's never gone to school at all. And making peace with democracy is understanding the messy realities of democracy aren't the same thing that we experience in the faculty lounge.
You mentioned Elon Musk and MAGA Republicans aligning with tech and drug companies. What does this mean for the American consumer?
Yeah, so we have this situation where the U.S. Congress, which I view to be the most important institution in government, really hasn't been doing its job. The U.S. Congress is a wonderful mix of people from all over the country with different views and different perspectives. And as big money, big tech, in the past it's been big oil or big pharma, as they get together and try to exploit institutions for their own interest, it's important that Congress hold these institutions accountable. We saw when Elon Musk was sitting in the White House overseeing the Doge effort to cut budget, the power of the purse sits with Congress. And so if we are going to get democratically legitimate outcomes from government, it just can't come from a single party, can't come from a president. This is where Congress has to do its job, and they call it a sausage factory for a reason, and do the hard work of governing the nation. And that means holding special interests accountable, including big money tech, and increasingly that's going into AI and so on. And if Congress doesn't do its job, don't be surprised that we see more partisanship and more polarization in this country.
Finally, Roger, if you could redesign the relationship between experts and the public from scratch, what principles would guide that framework?
So for me, it's very hard for me to make recommendations like, here's how we should reform democracy, or here's what elected officials should do. But I do know one thing that we can do as experts is we have control of expert institutions. And we need leaders of those institutions who are broadly supportive of the United States of America, which means recognizing there's a diversity of people with a diversity of perspective. And we experts exist to serve everyone, not just the people who share our politics or live in our town, but we serve everyone. And that leadership has to reflect that in places like the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, universities, scientific journals that publish, scientific associations. Step back from the overt politicking and be the adults in the room. And I know that's hard, and we are privileged. I'm on this podcast with you because I have a PhD and I'm an expert, so I have a voice. And it's very tempting to try to use your voice to exploit your particular interests. The institutions of science have gone too far down that path. So if I could redesign things, I would ask the leaders to step up and be reflective of the fact that they're Americans, they serve all Americans, and let's design our institutions with that purpose in mind.
Roger, thank you for being on The Excerpt.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. I'm Dana Taylor. I'll see you next time.